Okay. Play that funny music. Not gonna go.
Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen, Alex King, and life coach Tom Wells here. It's Friday, November the 9th, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time. That's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time, 1 p.m. London time, and we are off to a very silly mood start here on LOA Today. We're joking, we're laughing, we're getting ourselves into a happy space to get this program started. And you know what? That's a good thing. I like the idea that we're getting silly early on, you know?
We're like a super team of comedians.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's see what that's what happens when you bring a comedian on. I brought Alex on primarily because she's a comedian, and it turns out she's also a great contributor. And look what it's doing. It's lifting our energy up. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's making me incredibly competitive. To try to compete with Alex, this is really hard. Try to be funny. And I'm waiting for her to say, Tom, would you just back off and let me be the funny one?
There's room for all of us.
Oh, you're so nice. We should just give you the mic and let you roll for it.
I know, right?
Yeah, right.
This is actually an interesting take on the topic today, because the topic you came up with, Tom, is what are you projecting on the screen of your life? And I'm thinking, not only are we projecting on the screen of our life, we're projecting on the screen of our podcast. What we're projecting right here. What are we projecting right here? We're talking about this competition for who's the best. Wait a minute, hold on. What are we doing here?
Exactly. It's totally my projection. I always do that. Like I'm in comedy improv a lot, and I get competitive. If it's my turn to go up there and do something, I got to outshine the previous person if I can. Sometimes you come out with some pretty bad stuff when you're trying to outshine somebody else. But
welcome to Iron Comic, in which we will eliminate all of the remaining contestants until we have one Iron Comic.
Yeah, that's a reality show right there.
No, the key is to be in competition with yourself.
Very true.
And don't worry about everybody else.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then you're in competition with all those crazy parts of yourself. So.
True. There's a lot of people up here.
That's what Robin Williams was a living example of that.
Oh, boy.
True.
All these different voices he had in him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how many he did, but I mean, I remember like when he voiced the character in Aladdin, the genie character in Aladdin. I don't know how many characters he came up with. It must have been like 50 characters in the span of about 25 minutes. I mean, it was just one character after another. How the heck do you do that? Wow.
Well, ask Donald Trump. No, seriously, he's a total mirror of like projection. If you ever saw it, to me, it's like he's constantly projecting onto all these people, all these motives, right? And he's getting people to believe him, because I think they're projectors too. We're all projectors, I'm projecting all this negative qualities onto him constantly, and Mitch McConnell and all these people. Like I think that's, in a really unfortunate way, that's, I think, just what happened in the guy who shot all those people in Van Nuys or wherever that was in California.
I know.
He walks
that
in that
crazy.
bar and he projects onto those people enough that he believes he can kill them because they are responsible for his pain,
Mm-hmm.
I've got to think part of him believes that, to be able to do that. And look at how much grief people put on each other. The entire Congress is a living show of people projecting onto each other all their worst fears.
Welcome to the
so
world
we
of
not
politics.
only project good things on people, we project fearful things onto people, angry things, and
that's why we like Robin Williams better, because Robin Williams wasn't constantly projecting angry things on people. He was projecting fun, interesting, exciting, and enticing characters on people, and that's a lot more fun. That's much more interesting. Yeah. But it's a good question. The question you raised: what are you projecting on the screen of your life? And your description went on to say how much of our moment-to-moment experience of life is simply mirroring back to us what we are projecting. And that really is the nub of it, isn't it? I mean, I was just, before we even came on to do the show today, I was on Facebook looking at a couple of things that people had posted. And one of the things that I noticed was, yet again, there was yet another post about, well, what does this sign mean, right? In this particular case, somebody had a mirror that had broken. He was all freaked out about, oh my God, what does this mean? What does this mean? And it occurred to me that what he was kind of overlooking is kind of what a lot of people overlook, which is people tend to think that a sign is a projection of something to come. What they don't seem to remember is a sign is actually an indication of where you've been.
Or where you are right in that moment.
Or where you are right now. It's not what's coming. It's where you've already had this thought process. That's why the sign is there. And they kind of reverse the sequence, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. And then they freak out saying, well, where's this coming from? And the answer is, well, it's coming from you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, it's so, in a quantum physics universe, in my way I see it, is like vibration is happening every second. And how could anything not be the result of what's vibrating? So if you're getting back anything on any level, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, it's a vibration of what you are vibrating with. And your space in the universe in this moment is the result of your vibrations. And is that true? I mean, I think it is. So, but people would probably argue that endlessly if they don't want to take responsibility. Who wants to take responsibility for their flat tire on the freeway on the way to work,
Right.
I mean, oh my God, how could I have anything to do with causing that flat tire? But if it's totally somehow reflecting your vibration, that's like crazy making for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
They don't want to they don't even want to go there. What does your shirt say? Act like a princess, think like a boss.
Act like a princess, think like a boss, look like a model.
Oh baby.
All right.
I have a new T-shirt for every show, so it's going to be fantastic.
Dang, you have one heck of a T-shirt budget. That's all I got to say.
Five Below is where all the T-shirts are, so that's I don't spend more than $5 on my T-shirts.
Okay, all right.
Well, why didn't you always just wear them for the show and then send them back?
Well, no, I wear these just because I wear these.
Oh, you wear them all the time. You'll wear
I do. These are my shirts.
Oh, right on. You must live in a warm climate. I think you said you do, yeah.
No. Not right now.
Not really.
Oh. Tell me again. I know I asked you last week.
I'm in Massachusetts.
Oh, that's not warm.
No, it's not.
You keep your house warm, yeah.
Yeah.
I've gone on 2 layers for 28 and 29 degrees outside, yeah.
She lives in the same town that the Kennedys go to every year for their summer. She's in Hyannis.
Oh, Hyannis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a famous place.
It certainly is.
It is.
Yeah, and you're on the water.
Yep.
Yeah, lucky you.
Rough
life,
right? So we can already tell what you've been projecting onto the screen of your life. That's for sure. Right?
Yeah.
That's what happened. It was actually my mother's projection, and that's how we ended up where we are.
What do you mean?
Oh, you are your mother's projection?
Well, my mother projected that she wanted a place near the beach, reasonably priced, and here we are.
Oh, nice.
And I can tell that you objected every step of the way, right? you were just fighting it. Oh no, not the beach!
Like, no, no, I don't want to be warm.
Oh, that's great. So where are we going? Where are we going with this topic?
Let's talk about how we project. See, the thing is that even if we just assume that we project, we can begin to transform our lives in the ways that will help us, because we will get out of the realm of imagining that we're the victims of other people and situations and things, and we'll begin to take responsibility, and that's the beginning of transforming our lives into the life that we want. So you talk about, heading towards happiness. This is a mandatory part, the way I see it, of heading towards happiness is that you begin to own the fact that you create your reality. That's what projection is, that, what you vibrate with, you're going to have more of in your life. And the only part about it that confuses people, or the big part, is how come I end up with negative things in my life that I don't want? How could I be bringing that about? And that's where we have to, the way I look at it, I have to accept the fact that I have some vibrations in me that need to be cleaned up, or they need to be owned, so that I could say, well, I must have a vibration in me that causes there to be, the amount of money that I have, or the kind of relationships I'm showing up with, or the kind of health condition that's in my body, is all somehow reflecting the way that I feel on a really deep level about things. And not to blame ourselves, just to say, look at it objectively and say, well, that's what's happening, and there's nobody to blame here. It's not the external thing or myself. It just becomes a fact to witness it. You witness the fact that that's the way things are, and by doing that and not getting all freaked out about it, these things can begin to change. That's how they change. When we, remember how in step 5 of Abraham's way of looking at the law of attraction is when you're finally at the place that you can look at the dark and the light, you can look at the good and the bad, you can look at the sorrow and the joy in your life and own them both and not get freaked out about either one of them. That they're just, that's what you're creating. And it'll begin to balance itself out when we own the fact that that's just what's happening. And if there's really nasty things happening in our life, there's some vibration that we're going to have to own, about that. We can't put it off on somebody else or say that it's all the fault of Congress. It's all the fault of people with guns. It's all the fault of people that don't like guns. It's all the fault of, somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
And there should be classes in school from the time we're really little that teach us that we create our own reality, that our projections are bringing what's happening into our reality. Can you imagine what Congress would be like if everybody had been trained that from the time they were little kids? Mitch McConnell would be saying, I think it's the fault of the Democrats, but it's not. This is the way that I'm seeing reality. And there would be all these interviews on CNN of people owning the fact that they're creating it that way. The reporter at the White House would be saying, I know that I provoked that with Donald Trump, and I know that he provoked it with me. We're both dealing with our shadow side, that we can't admit the fact that we've got a charge on these things. But if we both own the fact that we have a charge on what we're talking about, then we could have a sensible conversation about it. And we could resolve these things,
It's a great point. And I would even like to take it a step further. Because you point out how there's really not any blame involved. It's just identifying what is. But I like to point out this is also beyond what is. This is our power. We're talking about when we have the ability to project on reality and have reality turn into what it is that we're projecting. That's a very powerful thing. And so instead of being terrified by what's going on, I got a result that I didn't want. Oh my God, I'm so frightened by that. I am so upset. I am so angry. I'm so pissed off. I'm so whatever. How about saying, hey, look what I did. It wasn't the result I was looking for, but I did that. I actually got reality to bend the way I want to. And all I got to do is just decide what I really want it to be instead of what I don't want it to be. How cool is that, though? I can actually do this. Wouldn't that be a nice, refreshing way of looking at stuff?
I think the three of us, we should form a team like Ghostbusters, and our job is to go into Congress and teach projection, teach how people are projecting. We have a little emergency aid station set up outside the halls of Congress, and people could come to our table and talk to us about, so Congressman, I noticed in your last exchange, you were projecting a lot. Let's talk about it. Sit down here, and we're going to do a little meditation, so close your eyes, and we're going to talk about your stuff here, Congressman.
Oh God,
It's
that
funny
would be
that
fun.
you bring that up, because I actually know a guy who goes into I believe it's one school, but he's got like this whole initiative thing, and he teaches young kids how to meditate and how to be at peace for at least I think they do like 20 minutes a day, and how to project goodness out into the universe and stuff like that. So yeah, it can be done.
That's
He's
good.
trying to get it into more schools, but so far I think he's up to 2.
Good for him. That's
Yeah.
great.
Hopefully there's a lot of people out there doing those kind of things. I think there are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot doing it in corporate America too, because some of
Yeah.
the best people in terms of, what do you call it, personal growth experts, they apply themselves in corporate settings. So I like to think that there's a whole bunch of CEOs and top managers in big corporations all over the world who are actually beginning to understand that they're creating things in their business by the way they think and the way they feel, and they're doing their work on themselves somehow. I'd like to believe that.
Hopefully,
Because
Now, I
that's
have a
changing.
question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How does this get affected by your subconscious? Because
Oh.
that's the problem I have.
You and
Well,
about
it is your
7 billion
it
other
is your
people.
I mean, it is our subconscious, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
whatever we're getting that we don't, that seems like that we really wonder, how could that be happening in my life? That's the stuff coming from the parts of us that we don't realize we're vibrating with. And that's what you could call the subconscious. And the cool thing about it is, if you go into your body and ask your body, what does it need? What's up? That's where these things are coming from. The kind of work I do with clients now is we go into what's called an alpha meditative state, where then they can feel what needs to come up from their subconscious to be processed, to be looked at, to be accepted, so that the level of anger, the level of fear, the level of sadness, the level of grief, whatever it is, once you feel it, it'll begin to transform. But because we run these constant programs on ourselves where we're running away from our grief, we're running away from our anger, we're running away from our deeper sadness, then it'll just continue to cycle without getting out of us. It won't get diffused, it won't get processed, because we're really doing actions that don't let it be felt, that don't let it really be felt. So these things have to be felt. They don't have to be expressed. You don't have to, have some giant pillow bashing thing with a baseball bat in order to get your anger out. Though that could help sometimes.
It helps.
But if we just even feel the fact that how angry we feel, and we're doing it in a meditative state, I think it can also get out of us. At least that's the work I'm trying to do with myself and other people.
That's good stuff.
But
I
think it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of work.
We probably need to restate this a
it
little
is.
bit, because we actually had a comment from a listener who was saying, "What is this about?" I mean, I think we kind of wandered a little bit, which we often do with the podcast, but basically asking, what is this? What exactly are we talking about there? And I wrote back that we're talking about the power that we have to project on reality and using the law of attraction, bring stuff into reality. But it's really something we need to define, I think. What exactly are we talking about when we talk about projecting? What is this activity that we're doing? We generally kind of call it deliberate creation, but what is this? What are we talking about here?
Well, we're saying over and over again one thing in my mind, and that is everything that we are is a vibration. And if we're vibrating, whatever we're vibrating with, we're getting back reflections of it from our environment. So everything in a way is a mirror. So, there really isn't people and things and circumstances that are impinging on us. Somehow we are creators. And that's kind of like the bottom line of the whole law of attraction thing. Are you a creator or not? And how are you a creator? Somehow we are shaping our vibration. So whatever emotion lives inside of us, and our belief systems, and which are tied what's the word? Totally together with, intricately together with, inexplicably together, our emotions and our belief systems, then whatever those are inside of us is making our life what it is. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Your beliefs and your feelings make your life what it is. And a whole lot of those feelings are hidden to us because when we were little kids, one way of looking at it, we learned to behave in certain ways to please our mother and father or whoever our caregivers were, all the way up through school. And by those systems, we learned to be appropriate human beings that got along in our environment so that we were fed and clothed and loved. Those are the projections we're running now, still in our lives, in order to survive and thrive. We're running the same operating systems we learned as little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so if some of those feelings we learned as little kids to survive were extreme because that's what we needed in our family of origin, because there was abuse or there was a parent who was not clear, who was not happy, who was not in touch with their own sadness or their own anger, they projected that way of behavior onto us. We learned it so we could get along with them, and we may still be doing it now with our relationships and our job and ourselves, acting out of those operating systems, projecting them out, creating our reality. And what do we want to do about that? That's what it comes down to.
That's
because
true.
if it's painful for us, any parts of our lives are painful, that's the unfinished business of those children, of what we locked in when we were very young. And some would say from past lives as well, that we're carrying that stuff, And I know that Abraham and Law of Attraction, they say they don't talk about, the belief that it could be coming also from past lives, but it doesn't matter, one way or the other. It's what we're experiencing, can be worked on, can be changed. We can transform our lives by feeling our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
By having experience and not repressing them any longer. Noticing, like if your spouse goes to work in the morning and calls you at 6 o'clock and says, honey, I've got to stay an extra 2 hours tonight. I won't be home. In fact, I might not even be home till 10 o'clock. So don't wait up for me. And then the spouse, because of his or her unfinished business, immediately starts thinking, God, I wonder if he or she is really at work.
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually going out with somebody from work and going to her house or his house? And what are they doing? I don't trust him. I don't trust her. And they start getting into this whole thing. And then when the spouse comes home at 10 o'clock at night and she or he's laying in bed and the spouse climbs into bed and she or he rolls over and says, were you really at work? I don't, anyway, there can be so much projection that is not true. It's coming from that person's unfinished fears that they're going to be abandoned. Because when they were little kids, their mother wasn't there for them the way they needed her to be. Or maybe she literally abandoned. I've had so many clients lately whose parent left them when they were 3 years old or they were 8 years old. It's amazing how many people had a mother or father that wasn't available to them. And of course, they might not be available emotionally. So that's projection right there, and we do it. We're doing it all the time. And that's that unfinished stuff. But if that person could feel deeply into the grief they feel around that abandonment, then they're going to less and less go to that place when their spouse is late coming home from work. They won't necessarily immediately start thinking and wondering and worrying, am I being abandoned?
And then Alex, of course, asked the more advanced question, which is, okay, we recognize that what we're projecting, what we're focusing on, what we're thinking about, is what we're producing in our lives. That's the problem, of course. If you're that spouse who's laying in bed waiting for your spouse to come home and you're projecting on that person that they were having an affair or whatever, you're increasing the likelihood they're going to have an affair. That's the problem. You're leading toward that, right? So
Right.
that's the more overt version. But Alex, you raised the more covert version, which is not that you're thinking these conscious thoughts, but you got the subconscious routine going on in the back of your head. And now
Because
all of
that's
a
my
sudden,
problem.
well, a lot of people have that. I have that problem.
Yeah.
It's actually the more insidious problem because it's the harder one to get at. I mean, the process. I think Tom, you're going to tell us the process is pretty much the same thing, getting to the root of it. But nevertheless, it's a more challenging problem because you don't see it as easily.
Yeah, but if we just simply decide we're going to do work to process whatever emotions are in us, we're going to go into this meditative state and let these things come up from our subconscious. And our body will tell us. We'll often feel it someplace in our body. We'll feel like I have this really painful psoas muscle on my right side. And I know it's where I'm holding a lot of my unprocessed emotions, because it's just there, or my sinus condition. My sinuses act up as soon as I eat any sugar or any dairy products. And I know there's an emotional trigger somehow in my sinuses. And so I begin to do the emotional work, and then those sinuses can heal, and then I'm more free of whatever the backed up emotion is I've been carrying since I was a little kid. I mean, I almost died the first 6 months of my life, my mother used to always say, and they found I had this condition in my body called colic, which is it's like an inflammation of the mucous membrane of the body. But that's the underlying thing of sinus conditions. And I've had hay fever and allergies my whole life. So it's the same thing's been there since I was really, really tiny. And if I don't go in and feel the feelings I had as that little newborn baby, I won't process this stuff. And it has to be processed, or it'll continue to plague me. I'll continue to have a sinus condition.
It's ironic too that you had this condition when you were 6 months or less, and it's been plaguing you all this time. And what you're suggesting is, well, it may have been something that was plaguing me when I was 6 months old or less, but that doesn't mean I have to be enslaved to it. It doesn't mean that I have to be subject to it. I can still overcome it, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. It can diffuse just by feeling the feelings that were associated with it. But, sometimes those feelings are difficult. Like, I definitely had a thing in the birth canal where I couldn't be born when I wanted to be born because my mother had to call a cab to get to the hospital, and she used to always laugh and say how much I wanted to be born in the cab. She said, and I held you in. Boy, I had to squeeze so hard to hold you in. And that's a classic traumatic thing that happens to babies that affects their whole life. It affects the emotional life of that baby because it felt like it was going to be suffocated. It was going to be crushed to death by the mother's powerful muscles. You've got the birth muscles pushing from one direction and her holding you in from the other direction. And the baby gets this huge mixed message, that's really not wanted. It's not able to be just flow out into the world and be born when it's ready to be born. And I've seen how that's affected my whole life, and it's still affecting me. And I'm still looking to do deeper work to find out what is that emotion in me. It's frustration, it's sorrow, it's grief, it's different things, but I'm now beginning to work on it.
I think it's also interesting that, on the face of it, the fact that you were trying to get born earlier than your mom had in mind showed just how persistent and dedicated you were to getting here. You didn't want to wait. You were ready. Okay, let's go. Life, here we come. I'm ready.
Right.
Well, he said he was punctual.
That's true.
Yeah. That's true. But by the way projection is explained, the way I understand it, I literally created that mother and that situation to play out something that needed to be played out in my life. And I've been literally playing it out my whole life, creating all kinds of situations where I can't step onto the stage of my life. I'm this kind of guy that I'm turning 70 in 2 weeks, and I've never manifested in my life the way I wanted to. I would have been a professional musician. I would have been, on stages doing incredible things, but I haven't done hardly any of that. And why? Why have I been relegated to the things I've done in my life? And a lot of it is because of my my things that happened in my early life and all that. And it's crazy. It's like,
It's an interesting thing, though.
I'd like to get free from those old emotions, huh?
I said it's an interesting thing because on the one hand, you're describing how we project onto our lives, we project various things. And on the other hand, you're asking a question that we all ask. We're all asking this question, how do I get past this thing? What is it that's going on here? What's this thing that's in my way? Why am I constantly being blocked by it? And it just seems ironic because while we're in it, it makes total sense. When we're in the middle of that makes total sense. When we look at it from outside, like we see somebody else going through it, the thing that occurs to us is, well, you just said it. You're projecting, and yet you're wondering why you're continuing to get the result. Well, it's because you're projecting. So it's so easy to see it in somebody else, and it's so hard to see it in ourselves. That's what I'm trying to say. It's an amazing thing.
When we're in the midst of the things that are called by psychology called the shadow side, the side that we really can't see, we're blind to it. Yeah, it's really frustrating. Like they have this term in psychology that's called compulsive repetition, and it's when you see somebody, for example, continually choose a partner or go out with people on dates that it takes them 3 months to realize, oh, this guy's doing the same thing to me that every other guy's done to me. Or I've picked a guy again who's going to abandon me, or I picked a guy again who doesn't have money. I picked a guy again, a woman again, who always is attracted to other men, no matter what. She'd never, I keep getting these women that think they really like me, but then all of a sudden they're flirting with other guys, and that's compulsive repetition. And it's so easy to blame the other person, I keep getting these stupid people, these people that do this stuff. And, but then after a while you start going, well, wait a minute. Why would I create this? Why would this pattern be happening over and over and over again in my life? It's because you've got some unfinished emotional business that needs to be felt inside of you to the depth that it exists. And you will then quit creating that situation,
And thereby change your projection, because that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to change what we're projecting. We're trying to change this one projection that I keep putting out there that keeps producing results I don't like. I'm trying to change my behavior so that I stop putting out that projection. So I stop putting it out there that I keep getting abused or keep getting taken advantage of or get the wrong partner or get the wrong experience in life. I'm trying to change what I'm doing.
I keep having this one that I think I'm stuck. And it's so much like my birth, it's like I can't. In fact, I was working with a therapist the other day, and when I got to a really deep point in a meditative state, she said, what wants to be said right now? And I said, I can't get to where I want to get to. And it was so cool to me to hear that come out of me, because it was like, oh my God, there's my birth all over again. I can't get to where I want to get to. And that's why I feel stuck. And now it's just like, how can I let go of that feeling that I can't get to where I want to get to? Because it's just this old, deep ingrained feeling that this little baby had, it's like that I can't, show up in the world the way I want to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, at some point we have to change our dialogue with ourselves, don't we? Because we do have that tendency to say, well, I can't do this. 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 Which is not exactly a conducive dialogue to changing I can't do this.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why you want to tell a better feeling story. Yeah. You want to tell a new story about it. But telling the story is not enough. You also have to change the underlying vibration that's in you. Because if that little baby felt terror, well then I've got to feel the terror on some level. Now I don't want to do it, I want to do it in a meditative state, rather than living it out, like creating terror in my life. But we wonder why the situations show up in our country the way they do with the extremes. It's because of a whole bunch of little kids inside of all these people that have unfinished emotional business that needs to be felt. And so they create extreme external situations, just like we do in our relationships, with other people.
There was a movie that came out a number of years ago. I can't remember what the name of the movie was. but it starred Marlee Matlin, and it was a self-help kind of a movie, and they were trying to.
Oh,
Do you remember which movie that was?
yeah, it's What the Bleep Do You
What the
Know?
Bleep? Well, that's it.
What
Yeah,
the
that's the
Bleep
one.
Do We Know?
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And toward the second half of that movie, she goes to a party. And in this party, you see all the people in the party with their, like you're describing, Tom, the child part of them coming out and behaving in all these rather inappropriate ways, expressing all this stuff that's going on inside of them. And I mean, the only problem I had with the movie is that they played that scene out so long that I said, okay, I got it. Tell me the next part, But other than that, it was great because you got to see these roles played out with these like cartoon character versions of the people who are actually at the party. It was pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could do that with some footage of Congress in session, just all the different unfinished business of all these different characters, Remember when Lindsey Graham got so angry during the Kavanaugh hearings and he started just to go crazy? Did you see that?
I heard about it.
I didn't.
Oh, he was just like frothing at the mouth with his anger at the way Kavanaugh was being treated, and he was making everybody wrong, who had anything negative to say about Kavanaugh, but he was doing it with viciousness, like a dog, and like growling, like that vibe. And I just saw, there's this guy's unfinished business right there in front of us, that he's just literally can't hold it back, his rage, and yeah, that's really a lot of work has to be done on this level and with all of us.
Agreed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So
Yeah.
let's see, where are we going with this? I mean, Alex, did we didn't really answer your question though, did we, Alex? Because you raised the question about what about the subconscious mind?
Yes and no. So I mean, it's difficult because it's your subconscious. You're in control of it, but you're not. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you do the work?
The nice thing that about it is that the work is always available in the present. So whatever situations are showing up in our life are reflecting back to us what needs to be worked on. And in a lot of ways, one of the main ways you do the work is you decide you're going to do it. It's making the decision that you're going to allow whatever's in yourself to be finally felt and experienced so that it can transform. So you decide that you make that decision, and then you trust that life is going to bring it on in the way that it needs to be brought on. And in law of attraction speak, you could say you're going to trust that Source is going to perfectly orchestrate your life to unfold everything you need to have unfolded that is going to then give you an increasingly expanding, beautiful experience of life. But you might have to go through some things, like I just recently went through a relationship that lasted a year on and off. I probably left that woman 10 times during that year, but the whole thing was I was working out stuff,
Yeah.
And here I was given a situation that literally showed me the both ends of the stick, incredibly positive things and incredibly negative things that were both my projections. I was seeing the real positive in her, literally putting her on a pedestal in some ways. So that was my real positive side of my personality. Then I was seeing these things in her that were just really, I couldn't even look at. How could she be that way? How could she believe that way? How could she act that way? And those were the things that I came to then begin to see. This is my shadow side that I don't want to look at. And so life presented me with a relationship that I'm going, why do I have to be in a relationship that has tons of things I love and tons of things I hate? Why can't I be in a relationship that's all the things I love? And it is because relationships are mirrors, and you have stuff that needs to be still worked on, and here you go, here's your mirror. But that's coming from Source. And it's coming because I want to be open to having a constant expansion of my infinite capacities, of my loving capacities, of all of my qualities. I want to see my best qualities come to be inside myself so I can have a really good relationship. And so I have to have mirrored to me the stuff I need to work on. And the next relationship, it'll be better. And that's what Abraham always says. If you're creating a certain situation in your life, know that does not have to be repeated again. You are manifesting it, and it is working itself out. But you've got to believe that it's working itself out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of it, because we do have the choice. We always have choice. It's up to us. What are we going to focus on? And no one else really gets to make that choice for us. We're the ones that get to make it for ourselves. Some people will try to. Some people will try to, brainwash you or whatever into following the choice that they had in mind for you. But ultimately, even in those situations, you still have the choice. It's up to you.
Right.
You always get to decide. And that's pretty powerful. That's a very empowering thing as far as I'm concerned.
A really empowering thing with projections is to look at whatever's happening and get out your journal and write the things you like and the things you don't like and say, how is that a reflection of me? Like one exercise I heard, and I think I talked about this on another podcast, is that you write down the 3 people in your life that you most admire and write down their qualities, write 5 or 10 qualities of the 3 people you most admire in your entire life ever. And then write down what it is you admire, those 5 or 10 qualities. Then write the 3 people that you most hate and detest and can't stand in your life. And write down 5 or 10 qualities of those people. And then at the top of that page, write, how am I these qualities? Because you are, one way or the other, those qualities. So, I wrote down Hitler and Stalin and, and then I wrote down their qualities and I said, how am I that? Well, on some level, as a human being, you could ask yourself, am I capable? Would I be capable if I was in their shoes of having acted that way? And so you begin to have compassion that, as much as we want to make those people into these things that are completely separate from us. Like, how could I ever be Donald Trump? How could I ever be Mitch McConnell? How could I ever be, some liberal everybody hates, but those qualities are human qualities. And on some level, we are all one. We are all reflections of each other, but we don't want to own the things that we hate. We only want to own the things that we love. But sometimes we don't even own the things we love. Like for years, I had this teacher from India, and I put him on such a pedestal for about 40 years that I always thought he was so much better than me. He's so much more wise. He's so much more enlightened. He's so much more loving. He's so much more compassionate. And eventually I had to realize these are qualities that I'm just not willing to own in myself. So we don't want to own the positive qualities, and we don't want to own the negative qualities. But that's where our work lies, is in trying to see, how am I that?
Your comment,
so if you hate
your story there reminds me of a story that I've told before that my wife told me when we first met, or shortly after we first met, how she had previously been a psychotherapist for 10 years. And when she was training to become a psychotherapist, there was a workshop that, as part of her study, she was required to attend on a weekend with this guru-type personality who she really admired, and she loved what he taught and so forth, and just had learned so much from him. And at the end of the workshop, she just felt like she was compelled to go up to him and say, I just wanted to thank you. I mean, you're just plain amazing. You're an amazing guru, an amazing teacher, and I just really appreciate it. And he said to her, well, if I'm amazing, what does that make you? And she thought about it for a moment. She says, well, I'm amazing in training.
I like it.
Yeah. Learning to own the same qualities. Yeah. I always like teachers who always, point it back to you. They always say, but this is you. I'm not any different than you. So if you're seeing something in me, you could only see it and get excited about it and love it if it was in you. It's part of your vibration. And the same as you hate the hell out of somebody, or you're just completely think somebody's a total a-hole, that's something, quality that you are not wanting to see in yourself. Not that you are totally that, but there's some vibration in you that's really getting triggered. And it's getting triggered because it's your vibe, because it's in you, but you're pushing it down. you're suppressing it so hard that you projecting it onto them and making them incredibly wrong. And think how many people have been murdered and put to death throughout the centuries because of how much people hated them, but they were literally not willing to own that there was something in that person that they were vibrating with inside themselves. And that's why they had such a huge charge on it.
That's very true. Yeah. In fact, I'm recalling a conversation I had with Joel Elston yesterday after we did our podcast. We were talking about what's been going on with the elections and what's been going on with the president and so forth. And Joel remarked to me that he'd always wondered how it could be. He was trying to piece together in his mind back in the 1920s, 1930s when Hitler came to power. How is it that there were all these people who could just follow him? Because when you read his stuff or you hear the translations of his speeches or so forth, he sounds like a madman. And yet, at that time, there were literally millions of Germans who would not only follow him, but would follow him enthusiastically. How could that be? And then he said, well, now that I've been seeing what happens with Trump and the Trump supporters, and I see them exhibiting the exact same kinds of just blind acceptance, regardless of what he says. Doesn't matter how true it is, doesn't matter how polite it is, doesn't matter how nasty it is, doesn't matter any of it. They'll just follow it. They'll just follow it. And he says, wow, I guess I can see how it could happen. I guess I can see how a Hitler could come to power. It makes sense now.
And that's why this work that we're talking about in this podcast, I think, is the key to us not turning into a fascist regime or becoming at another civil war, where people decide we have to start killing each other because your beliefs are just too much not okay for me. But if we could start to own the fact of why are your beliefs too much not okay for me? Why is that triggering so much fear in me? Why is it triggering so much rage and anger in me?
Right.
Where is that coming from in me?
Yes.
And we could, that set up those little emergency stations, where people can go and say, look, I'm projecting. I'm getting really, really angry at Mitch McConnell. What can I do? Well, you need to start working on this stuff inside yourself. Then you can bring some love into the halls of Congress. You could bring some equanimity. You could bring some compassion. You could bring some understanding and acceptance. And that's how we begin to talk across the aisle. We begin to talk about our differences, and we don't have to kill each other about it.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, what you talked about with the mirror, how it's all a mirror of what's going on inside you. That's what Trump is. President Trump is a professional mirror. He mirrors back to his supporters exactly what they're feeling, exactly what they're thinking, exactly what they're believing. He's just mirroring it right back to them, saying, yeah, I'm with you, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And that makes him popular. And the same thing happens on the left, too. The left does the exact same thing. They just do it on different stuff. But it's the same basic principle. Mirror at people the stuff that they're all frothing at the mouth about. And, I'm with you, I'm with you.
And he's mirroring to liberals, like a person like me, he's mirroring the stuff that I don't want to look at in my own self. Because
same thing.
The stuff that I get so intolerant about him and so like blown away and bewildered and confused and angry and upset about the things he says or does, destroying national monuments, all these things. This is a part of me that I don't want to own the fact that that's some part of my vibration. There's something in me that is not at peace, and I know that's the hardest part about projection to understand.
It is.
How could it not be him? How could I have anything to do with the way that he's showing up?
Because we like the positive mirrors, or what we perceive to be the positive mirrors, but we don't like the negative mirrors. The negative mirror is like, oh no, that's not me. I'm only the positive ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Or we think, well, when was I ever like that? It's just, it's a vibration. If you have that level of fear in you, you have that level of anger in you, that's what you got to look at.
So, exactly.
This is coming from somewhere.
It really is.
A lot of what I would call my liberal friends and myself, we've created such a belief that we're the docile, loving, compassionate, kind, humanitarian people. And we identify with that so strongly that I refuse to identify with the fact that I could have a part of me that could kill somebody. I have a part of me that could hate somebody. I have a part of me that could stir up malicious intent, and some of us would say that's just not true. I just do not have that part. It's not me. That's everything but me. But, we'll get vehemently angry about the fact that we're not that. And that's why when I saw that reporter getting into that tough with Trump yesterday and it caused this whole scene, part of me knows because of projection that reporter has got issues exactly the same as Donald Trump does.
Yes.
And that's why the two could go head to head like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's true. And in fact, we're also seeing it in terms of the more violent stuff. People, for instance, will point at the various ways that the president has incited violence in society. And yet those same people, while what they're saying is true, it does incite it, but they're also failing to notice the violence that was incited from the other direction. Like, for instance, Tucker Carlson, being basically attacked in his own home by protesters. Somehow that always gets skipped by the left. And same thing going the other direction too. The Trump side is blind to the different ways that they're inciting this stuff, but they're constantly pointing at how the Democrats are inciting stuff. It's like neither side wants to recognize that they themselves are directly involved in this thing. They themselves are the projectors, and that creates a bad scenario.
Yep, it does.
Yeah.
The hard thing of owning the fact that we have these negative emotions in us and these hard emotions, that they're simply not, they're acting out because we just don't know how to own them and accept the fact that, wow, there is something in me that's really, really sad. Or there is something in me that's really, really angry. Yeah, it's hard work. I think it's like we need teams of processors, that could teach us, how do you go into your necessary processing and do it. And that's what that's the training I'm doing right now, is to become an emotional clearing facilitator, because I want to facilitate people being able to get through this stuff. And I want to get through it myself, which is so it's driving me, but it seems like just kind of work that's got to be done. So.
Well, the good news I'm seeing is that I'm seeing more and more people on both the left and the right, and since we're talking about politics, who are saying this has to stop. So that's like the first step, right? I mean, maybe they aren't on either side ready to acknowledge their role in it, but they're at least willing to say this has got to stop. That's a good first step. You don't want to stop it. You want to keep going. You want to keep, developing beyond that. But that to me is a good sign. I like that. I think that's positive. I think that's an improvement.
Right.
I was always wondering what it would take to have real dialogue, like in Congress. And there was this guy named Marshall Rosenberg, and his specialty was nonviolent communication. And what he did in nonviolent communication, he would go work with the Israelis and the Palestinians and all these different highly conflicting, situations in the world. He was a specialist at that. He would go into inner city things to work with, kids that were incredibly troubled and who were causing huge problems in the inner city schools and, violence. And he would get the two sides together. And what he did was he helped each side see how each person on both sides had beautiful feelings and beautiful needs. And so he would help each side see, okay, what is your beautiful needs? And what are your beautiful needs? Okay, and what are your beautiful feelings that are attached to those beautiful needs? And you could have the same thing happen with a father and son, a mother and a daughter, a husband and a wife, whoever is at each other's throats, if they could just sit down and see what are your beautiful feelings and beautiful needs and what are your beautiful feelings and beautiful needs. We used to do that in my family, my stepfamily. We have a talking stick and we'd give it to my daughter and we'd ask her, what are you feeling and what do you need from us? And then she had to be quiet and give it to her mother, and her mother had to say, what are you feeling and what do you need from your daughter? And then they'd give it to me, and I'd say, what am I feeling and needing as the person who's trying to be the peacemaker here, and who feels stuck in the middle between the extreme anger of the daughter and the extreme anger of the mother, And it helped. It helped a lot. It didn't totally solve everything, but boy, when you get people to just listen to the other person,
right.
and understand that we are all just wounded children inside. We're all just trying to get what we need. And nobody's need is bad. When you finally find out that that's a real similar need to what you have, but at the bottom of it. But the way it ends up manifesting is sometimes just this total rage. I want to take the car on Friday night. You can't have the car on Friday night because you never clean your room, or whatever. And then they're just stuck there.
Yeah.
Instead of, Mom, I need to see my friends, and honey, I need to have you have a clean room, and why do you need that? Well, I need to know that my daughter is going to grow up okay to be a good person, and the daughter says, and I need my mother to know that I need to be able to have a social life even if my room isn't perfect, and they start talking about it. And they find out what their needs are. And then I feel really hurt that you don't trust me that I'm going to take care of my room. And the mother says, I feel really sad because I feel you just want to take from me and you don't want to give back. And, I feel like you don't respect the fact that I need your love, and all these dialogues start happening and things start working out.
Yeah. Well, we only have a few minutes left now. I want to make sure I get our promos in before we each give our final word on the subject, so to speak. But first of all, we want all of our listeners to be subscribers, and most of them are. About 75% of our listeners in any given episode are subscribers, according to the statistics that I get from various sources. So that's a good thing. Our subscribers are there and they're loyal, and we love that. But if you're somebody who has not yet subscribed, yeah, that's right. But if you're not yet a subscriber, we want to encourage you to become one. So, become one. I've got links into the descriptions of most of the places where these audio and video files are located. If you can't find where they are, or if you don't really know how to subscribe to a podcast on your own, just go to the homepage of our website at loatoday.net. You'll find links there for Android users and links for iPhone and iPad users, and you just click the right link and it walks you through it. And then once you become a subscriber, make sure that you're sharing on social media the fact that you're listening, because the stuff that we talk about on these shows is really important, not just for understanding how the law of attraction works, but we're helping to uplift a large segment of the population, and we want that population to keep growing. We want more and more people to get their daily dose of happy. That happens through the law of attraction, and one of the ways that you can help us with that is by putting it out there, because that's what we do, right? With the law of attraction, we put out what we want. We put out what we want, and then we get it back. So we're putting it out to you. We want you to share the fact that you're listening, because when you put it out, that just magnifies and multiplies the whole effect. So please do subscribe, and please do continue to share. And Alex, I'm going to come to you first, because you actually didn't. You were pretty quiet today. You often have a lot to say. Today,
I'm sick.
You're sick? Is that what it is? Oh, okay. So I want to give you a chance to
I think it's that I talk too much.
So what's your big takeaway? What's your big takeaway today, Alex? What's the thing that you find to be the best piece of information you took from today's talk?
What I took away from today's talk was that you're projecting no matter what, so let's try to make it positive.
Well, that's a good one. That's good. I like that. Of course, sometimes we're projecting the negative too, so it's also noticing when we're projecting negative and say, "Oh, geez, I'm projecting negative.
That's
Maybe
true.
I'll switch that around."
Yeah.
That's good stuff too. All right, I can tell you're not terribly talkative, so I'll go to Tom. So, Tom, what's the takeaway for today?
The takeaway? For me, it's the fact that this subject is a good thing to be talking about with all of us, because we all want to be freer and clearer and happier and less feeling burdened by things that aren't getting expressed. And it's wonderful to have a way to express all of our feelings and to feel all of our feelings, and to just feel better inside, feel a lot better inside, and more congruous with who we are when we've let ourselves appreciate all the amazing things about us and all the things that are challenging.
And obviously, because you're a life coach, that makes you also of interest to some people, perhaps, who want a more personal conversation. How do they reach out to you?
They can go to my website, which is called youarejoy.com, and they can sign up for a free half-hour of coaching there. There's a page to sign up.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Alex and Tom, this has been good. I'm looking forward to the next time we do this together, but good conversation today. Good stuff. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
All right. And we hope that you'll join us as well, our listeners, next time on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.